1 year after the second battle, the galaxy was different. Captain Hyun, now promoted to admiral by Emperor Daiho himself, stood on the observation deck of an imperial diplomatic vessel. Through the transparent wall he could see the neutral world of Sanctuary Prime, a planet that belonged to neither the Valdrian Empire nor humanity. It was here that both sides had agreed to meet. Behind Hyun, Counselor Yunbi prepared for the most important negotiation in imperial history. She was young for her position, only 100 cycles old, but she had risen to power on a wave of reform following the disasters at Seoul. The old guard, the admirals and generals who had advocated for total war, had been swept aside by a population demanding change. "Are you nervous?" Yunbi asked Hyun. "Yes," he admitted. "We tried to conquer them twice. We failed both times. Now we're asking them to sit at the same table with us. If I were them, I'd refuse." Yunbi smiled slightly. "Then it's fortunate that humans are more practical than proud. They understand what we're beginning to understand. The galaxy is changing. On Earth, General Ji-hoon, now given the title Ambassador General, prepared for his own journey. The past year had been difficult. 2 billion dead. Entire cities destroyed. The planet's economy in ruins. But humanity had survived, and in surviving they had proven something to the galaxy. They were not prey. They were predators. "The Council has approved your authority to negotiate," said Dr. Bowman. He had aged in the past year, his hair now completely white. The stress of creating weapons that killed millions had taken its toll. "You can offer them trade, technology exchange, and a non-aggression pact. But no military alliance." "Not yet," Ji-hoon nodded. "I understand. Trust has to be earned." Ambassador Yuna, who had opposed the war from the beginning, stood nearby. "General, they'll want something from us. Probably our AI technology and our weapon systems. Are we prepared to share that?" "If it means peace," Ji-hoon replied. "Yes, but we'll keep our most advanced systems secret. Just in case." On the imperial capital world, Emperor Daiho faced a crisis. The war with humanity had cost the Empire 4,000 warships and hundreds of thousands of lives. But worse than the military losses were the political consequences. Across the Empire, subjugated species had watched the battles at Seoul. They had seen a primitive species, using inferior numbers and smaller ships, defeat the mighty Valdrian not once but twice. And they had begun to wonder, if humans could resist the Empire, why couldn't they? Rebellions had erupted on a dozen worlds. Trade routes were being raided by pirates who had never dared to act before. The Empire's authority, built over 3,000 years, was crumbling. Daiho was old and tired. He had ruled through strength because that was all he knew. But watching the reports from Seoul, watching human pilots sacrifice themselves to save their world, he had realized something. Strength alone wasn't enough anymore. He called Counselor Eunbi to his private chambers. "I'm abdicating," he told her. "Effective immediately. You'll take my place as leader of the Empire." Eunbi was shocked. "Your Majesty, I'm not prepared for this." "No one is ever prepared to rule," Daiho replied. "But you understand what I finally learned too late. The galaxy is changing. Species that we subjugated centuries ago are watching. They're learning. If we continue to rule through force alone, eventually they'll unite against us. Better to change now while we can still control the transition." "What do you want me to do?" Yunbi asked. "Make peace with the humans," Daiho said, "and then reform the Empire. Give our subject species representation. Share our technology. Build something that can last beyond conquest." 3 weeks later, the delegations met on Sanctuary Prime. The neutral world had been chosen carefully, a planet with beautiful gardens and peaceful architecture, designed to encourage cooperation. Admiral Hyun and Counselor Yunbi represented the Valdrian Empire. Ambassador General Ji-hoon and Ambassador Yuna represented humanity. Between them sat representatives from a dozen other species, all watching to see what would happen. The first meeting was tense. Ji-hoon and Hyun stood across from each other, two soldiers who had fought against each other now forced to talk. "You destroyed 2 fleets," Hyun said quietly. 6,000 ships. Hundreds of thousands of lives. Do you understand what you've done to the Empire? "You came to conquer us," Ji-hoon replied evenly. "We defended ourselves. What would you have done in our position?" Hyun had no answer. He had asked himself the same question many times over the past year. If the Valdrian had been the ones facing extinction, would they have fought any less fiercely? Counselor Unby stepped forward. We didn't come here to assign blame. We came to find a way forward. The Empire has made mistakes. We recognize that now. We're prepared to offer significant concessions. She outlined the Empire's proposal, a formal recognition of Earth as an independent power, access to Valdrian trade networks, technology exchanges, and something unprecedented in Imperial history, a seat on the Galactic Council with full voting rights. In exchange, Yunbi continued, we ask for your military expertise, not your weapons, though we'd welcome technology sharing. What we need is your knowledge of adaptive warfare and your AI systems. Our enemies are learning from your example. We need to learn as well. Ambassador Yuna reviewed the proposal carefully. It was generous, more generous than she had expected. This is acceptable as a foundation, but we have conditions. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. Both sides argued, compromised, and slowly built a framework for peace. The Treaty of Terra, as it came to be known, was signed on a human calendar date that both species would remember. October 15, 2248. The treaty guaranteed Earth's independence and sovereignty. It established trade relationships that would benefit both species. It created scientific exchange programs where Valdrian could learn human innovation and humans could learn Valdrian refinement. And it established a mutual defense pact, should either species face external threats. At the signing ceremony, pilot Junho stood in the audience. He was one of only 12 survivors from the Icarus squadron. He wore his dress uniform, decorated with medals that felt too heavy for the simple acts of survival they represented. When the signing was complete, Counselor Yunbi approached the human delegation. She looked at Junho and the other veterans present, then bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in Valdrian culture. We came to your world as conquerors, she said. We learned humility from your courage. We learned wisdom from your sacrifice. The Empire owes humanity a debt that can never be fully repaid. Junho stepped forward. The room fell silent as the young pilot faced the leader of the Valdrian Empire. His voice was quiet but clear. Was it worth it? He asked. All those lives, all that destruction, was it worth it to learn what you should have known from the beginning? That all species deserve respect? The silence stretched. Hyunbi met Junho's eyes, and in them she saw the reflection of everyone who had died because the Empire had thought itself superior. No, she said honestly, it wasn't worth it. Nothing could be worth that price. All we can do now is ensure that the lessons learned are never forgotten. Admiral Hyun stepped forward and stood beside Junho. I was in both battles, he said. I watched your people fight with a desperation we couldn't understand. But now I understand. You weren't fighting for territory or resources or glory. You were fighting for the right to exist, and that's a power no military force can overcome. The ceremony concluded and the treaty was filed in the archives of both civilizations. Earth was now officially part of the galactic community, not as a conquered species but as an equal partner. In the months that followed, the galaxy watched as the impossible happened. The Valdrian Empire began to reform itself. Species that had been subjugated for centuries were given representation in the new council. Trade replaced tribute. Cooperation replaced domination. It wasn't perfect. There were hardliners on both sides who opposed the peace. There were incidents and misunderstandings. But slowly, carefully, two very different species learned to work together. Dr. Bowman led the scientific exchanges, sharing human AI technology while learning Valdrian power generation techniques. The combination of human innovation and Valdrian refinement led to breakthroughs neither species could have achieved alone. General Jihoon retired from military service, but remained as an advisor. He spent his time writing about the war, ensuring that future generations understood both the cost of conflict and the value of peace. And on Earth, in the cities that had been rebuilt from the ruins of war, children grew up learning about the Battle of Seoul. They learned about Commander Nari's sacrifice, about Pilot Junho's courage, about the day humanity proved it belonged among the stars. 20 years after the Treaty of Terra, a new threat emerged from the unexplored regions of the galaxy. A species called the Devourers, driven by hunger and expansion, began consuming entire star systems. When the warning reached the Galactic Council, Admiral Hyun and General Jihoon, both now in their 80s, met one more time. We face extinction, Hyun said. All of us. The Devourers don't negotiate. They don't surrender. They simply consume. Jihoon nodded slowly. Then we fight. Together. The combined fleet that assembled to face the Devourers was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Valdrian capital ships working alongside human carriers. 3 months after the first battle, the Valdrian Empire returned to the Sol system. This time they brought 5,000 warships. General Jihoon watched the sensor displays as the massive fleet emerged from faster-than-light speed near the orbit of Mars. 5,000 ships. Each one bristling with weapons. Each one carrying thousands of soldiers. It was the largest military force ever assembled by the Valdrian Empire. Well, Jihoon said quietly, they're serious this time. Commander Nari stood beside him in the underground command center. She had spent the last 3 months preparing for this moment. Earth's fleet had been rebuilt and reinforced. New weapons had been deployed. Every human who could hold a weapon had been trained. And still looking at the size of the enemy fleet, she felt a cold knot in her stomach. We have 300 ships, she said. They have 5,000. The mathematics aren't in our favor. Mathematics, Jihoon replied. The Empire thinks war is about numbers. They're about to learn it's about will. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship Absolute Power, Admiral Sun Young reviewed the tactical situation. She had spent 3 months studying everything they knew about humanity. Their tactics, their weapons, their psychology. She had learned from Taeyang's failure. She would not underestimate these primitives. Captain Hyun stood at his station, the only survivor from the first battle to be given a position of authority in the new fleet. Emperor Daeho had promoted him specifically because he had seen the humans fight. He knew what they were capable of. The humans have retreated to a defensive position near their moon, Hyun reported. Approximately 300 warships, thousands of autonomous drones, and something new. There are satellites in close orbit around their star. Sun Young studied the display. What do the satellites do? Unknown, Hyun admitted. But they're using massive amounts of power. Whatever they are, they're important. Then we destroy them first, Sun Young decided. All ships advance to the star's orbit. Target those satellites. I want them eliminated before we engage the main fleet. The Grand Armada moved forward. 5,000 ships advancing in perfect formation. Their combined firepower enough to crack a planet's crust. Behind them, troop carriers held millions of soldiers ready to invade Earth once its defenses fell. In orbit around the sun, Dr. Bowman watched the alien fleet approach. His Pandora array satellites were the product of 3 months of desperate work. Each one was equipped with advanced magnetic field generators and plasma collectors. Together they could do something no weapon system had ever done before. They could weaponize a star. General, Bowman said over the communication link, the enemy fleet is moving into position. We can activate Pandora in approximately 10 minutes. Do it, Jihoon ordered. And may whatever gods are watching forgive us for what we're about to do. The battle began at Mars orbit. Admiral Sun Young sent a forward group of 1,000 ships to engage the human fleet while the rest focused on destroying the mysterious satellites. Commander Nari commanded the human defense from the ESS Indomitable. Around her, 300 human warships prepared for the fight of their lives. They were outnumbered more than 16 to 1, but they had advantages the Empire didn't understand. All ships, Nari commanded. Execute Swarm Protocol Delta. Let's show them what we've learned. The human ships scattered, breaking formation in a way that seemed chaotic but was actually precisely calculated. Around them, thousands of AI-controlled drones formed a living shield, creating patterns of movement so complex that the Valdrian targeting systems couldn't track them effectively. Young pilot Junho sat in the cockpit of his fighter, part of the Icarus Squadron. They had volunteered for the most dangerous mission. If the battle went badly, they would ram their fighters into the enemy capital ships, using their antimatter engines as weapons. Icarus Squadron, Junho said over the communication channel. Remember why we're here. That's our home behind us. Our families. Our future. We don't lose, his squadron mates acknowledged. 30 fighters against 5,000 ships. The odds were laughable. But Junho had studied history. He knew about ancient Earth battles where small groups had held off massive armies through courage and tactics. Today, humanity would add one more story to that legacy. The first wave of Valdrian ships opened fire. Energy weapons bright enough to blind carved through space. Missiles by the thousands streaked toward the human fleet. It was a display of firepower that should have ended the battle in minutes, but the human ships danced between the attacks. Their smaller size and superior engines allowed them to dodge and weave in ways the larger Valdrian vessels couldn't match, and when they fired back, every shot was calculated by AI targeting systems that never missed. Valdrian ships began to die, not in ones or twos but in dozens. The humans targeted engines and reactors with surgical precision. Each shot was designed for maximum damage with minimum energy expenditure. They were fighting efficiently, conserving their resources for the long battle ahead. Admiral Sun Yung watched in growing frustration as her forward group took heavy casualties. All ships focus fire. Stop spreading out and concentrate on single targets. But coordinating 5,000 ships in the chaos of battle was nearly impossible. The Valdrian had practiced formations and maneuvers for millennia, but those tactics assumed enemies who fought in traditional ways. The humans fought like nothing they'd encountered before. "Admiral," Hyun called out, "the satellites around their star are activating." On every screen in the command center, the Pandora array came to life. The satellites generated massive magnetic fields that reached deep into the sun's corona. They grabbed the star's plasma, the superheated matter that made up the sun's outer layers, and twisted it into focused streams. Solar flares erupted from the sun's surface, but these weren't natural flares. They were directed, controlled, aimed at the Valdrian fleet with terrifying precision. The wave of stellar radiation hit the fleet like a tsunami. Shields designed to stop weapons fire were useless against the raw power of a star. Electronic systems fried, hull plating heated to dangerous levels. Hundreds of ships went dark, their crews fighting to restore power while their vessels drifted helplessly. "Impossible," Sun Yung whispered. "They've weaponized their star." Jihoon watched the results on his displays. The Pandora array had worked even better than predicted. The Valdrian fleet was in chaos, their formations broken, their ships struggling to adapt to a threat they'd never imagined. "Now," Jihoon ordered, "launch all antimatter missiles. Target the capital ships." Throughout the human fleet, missile tubes opened. Hundreds of Prometheus antimatter warheads launched, each one capable of destroying a ship many times larger than itself. They accelerated toward the disabled and confused Valdrian fleet. The missiles found their targets. Matter met antimatter, and the resulting explosions lit up the solar system. Valdrian capital ships, some of them thousands of years old, ceased to exist in flashes of pure energy. Junho and the Icarus squadron dove into the chaos. Their fighters were small and fast, equipped with weapons that could punch through damaged shields. They targeted the Valdrian command carriers, the massive ships that coordinated the fleet's movements. "Icarus leader to all units," Junho called. "Remember your training. Hit the bridge sections. Make every shot count." His fighter screamed through the void at speeds that would kill an unprotected human. Around him, his squadron mates engaged the enemy with the precision of surgeons and the fury of warriors defending their home. A Valdrian carrier loomed ahead, its shields flickering from solar radiation damage. Junho armed his missiles and fired. The carrier's point defense systems tried to stop the incoming weapons, but they were too slow. The missiles struck the bridge and the massive ship went dark. But the Valdrian were far from defeated. Admiral Sun Yung rallied her forces, pulling the fleet back from the sun and reorganizing. She had lost over 1,000 ships, but she still had 4,000. The humans had lost 50. "All ships," Sun Yung commanded. "Target the human homeworld directly. Prepare antimatter bombardment. If we can't beat them in space, we'll destroy what they're fighting to protect." Hyun felt sick as he processed the order. "Admiral, that will kill billions of civilians." "That's the point," Sun Yung replied coldly. "We end this now." The Valdrian fleet turned toward Earth, weapons charging. They would bypass the human fleet entirely and strike at the planet itself. Hundreds of antimatter missiles, each one capable of destroying a continent, prepared to launch. Commander Nari saw the enemy's intention immediately. "All ships, intercept course. We have to stop those missiles." But the human fleet was too far away. They couldn't reach Earth in time. The antimatter missiles launched, a wave of destruction aimed at humanity's homeworld. "No," Nari whispered. Then the ESS Indomitable turned and accelerated directly toward Earth, its engines burning at maximum power. Other ships followed, but Nari's ship was fastest. She reached the missile swarm first. "All hands," Nari said calmly over the ship-wide communication system. "It's been an honor serving with you. Thank you for your courage." Remember, we do this so Earth lives. She activated the Indomitable's self-destruct sequence. The ship's antimatter reactor lost containment in a controlled burst. The explosion was bright enough to be seen from Earth's surface. The battle lasted 4 hours. To Admiral Taeyang it felt like 4 years. His flagship, the Eternal Victory, shuddered as another human missile struck its damaged shields. Sparks flew from control panels. Officers shouted reports that all sounded the same. Systems failing, hull breaches, ships destroyed. How many? Taeyang demanded. How many ships have we lost? Captain Hyun checked his console, his face pale. 32, sir. We've lost 32 ships. Impossible, Taeyang whispered. We have the most powerful fleet in the sector. These are primitives. They shouldn't even have spaceflight. Another explosion rocked the ship. On the main screen, Hyun watched as a Valdrian dreadnought broke apart under the coordinated fire of a dozen small human vessels. The human ships moved like a school of fish, never staying still, always supporting each other, and around them, thousands of autonomous drones created a web of firepower that nothing could penetrate. Sir, we need to retreat, said the second-in-command. We can't win this fight. Taeyang's pride warred with his survival instinct. He had never retreated in his life. Every battle he'd fought had ended in victory. But this wasn't a battle. This was a slaughter. All ships, he said quietly. Prepare to jump to faster than light speed. We're withdrawing. Hyun worked his console, sending the retreat order. But before the fleet could execute the jump, something new appeared on his sensors. A massive human ship, larger than any they'd seen so far, emerged from behind Earth's moon. The ESS Indomitable was beautiful in a deadly way. Its hull was dark, almost invisible against the void of space. Weapons bristled from every surface, and at its heart, a reactor that generated more power than some small stars. Commander Nari sat in her command chair, watching the alien fleet try to escape. Minho, lock all weapons on the flagship. Let's send them home with a message. Tactical Officer Minho was 25 years old, and this was his first real combat. His hand shook slightly as he targeted the Eternal Victory, but his voice was steady when he spoke. Weapons locked, Commander. Fire. The Indomitable unleashed everything. Missiles streaked through space. Energy weapons carved burning lines through the darkness. Kinetic kill vehicles accelerated to impossible speeds. All of it converged on Taeyang's flagship. The Eternal Victory's shields, already damaged from the earlier fighting, collapsed completely. Armor plating that could withstand the heat of a sun melted like wax. The ship's elegant curves were torn apart by weapons that had been designed by a species that knew how to kill. But Nari had been careful. She'd targeted the ship's weapons and engines, not its core. She wanted survivors. She wanted witnesses. Taeyang's flagship went dark, tumbling through space, lifeless but intact. Around it, the remaining 18 ships of his fleet jumped to faster than light speed and fled. The battle was over. Humanity had won. In the command center beneath Geneva, General Ji-hoon allowed himself a moment to breathe. The screen showed the results. 4 human ships destroyed, 32 alien ships obliterated, 1 alien flagship disabled and captured, 18 alien ships retreating. Status of our losses? He asked. A technician replied. ESS Warrior, ESS Defender, ESS Liberty, and ESS Hurricane. Total crew losses approximately 4,000 personnel. 4,000 lives. Ji-hoon felt the weight of each one. They were soldiers, yes, but they were also sons and daughters, mothers and fathers. They had died defending their world. Their sacrifice would be remembered. And the captured alien ship. We're towing it to a secure location, Commander Nari reported. She had returned to the command center after the battle. Her uniform was clean, but her eyes were tired. There are survivors. Approximately 300 aliens out of an original crew of 2,000. Treat them well, Ji-hoon ordered. Medical care, food, respect. We're not barbarians. Ambassador Yuna had been quiet during the battle, but now she spoke. General, they'll tell the Empire what happened here. They'll come back with a larger fleet. I know, Ji-hoon said. That's why we let them go. We need the Empire to understand what they're facing. One battle might be a fluke. But when they return with overwhelming force and we defeat them again, they'll start to understand. Aboard the disabled Eternal Victory, Captain Hyun activated the ship's emergency quantum communicator. It was independent of the main computer systems, designed to function even if everything else failed. He sent a compressed data burst to the Imperial capital. knowing it would arrive within hours despite the vast distance. The message contained everything. Sensor logs showing how the humans had infiltrated their systems, battle recordings showing the speed and precision of the human ships, casualty reports that would shock the Empire to its core, and one line of text that Hyun wrote himself. "We have encountered something new. We have encountered something worse than us." On the Imperial capital world, Emperor Daiho read Hyun's report in his private chambers. He was old, ancient by most standards, and he had seen much in his 500 cycles of life. But this report made him feel something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. The humans had destroyed 2/3 of the Fourth Fleet in 4 hours. They had used weapons and tactics that the Valdrian had never encountered. They had turned the Empire's own technology against itself, and according to the report, they had done it with casual efficiency, as if they'd been preparing for this exact scenario. "They sent that primitive message on purpose," Daiho said to himself. "They wanted us to think they were weak. They set a trap and we walked right into it." His advisors would tell him to negotiate, to approach the humans diplomatically and seek a peaceful resolution. But Daiho was not just an emperor. He was Valdrian. For 3,000 years, his people had dominated the galaxy through strength. If the Empire backed down now, if they showed weakness after a defeat, every species they ruled would see it. Rebellions would spread. The Empire would crumble. No, there was only one option. Overwhelming force. A fleet so large that not even these clever humans could stand against it. Daiho activated his communicator and connected to Admiral Sun Young, commander of the Grand Armada. She was the Empire's finest military officer, responsible for the defense of the Imperial capital and the surrounding sectors. "Admiral," Daiho said, "I'm sending you a report. Read it carefully. Then I want you to assemble the largest fleet we've ever fielded, 5,000 ships, every weapon system we have, every soldier we can spare." Sun Young's holographic image flickered before him. She was younger than Daiho, but still old by human standards, over 200 cycles. Her face was hard, scarred from decades of combat. "Your Majesty, a fleet that size will leave our core systems vulnerable." "I'm aware," Daiho replied, "but if we don't respond to this threat with absolute force, we won't have an empire left to defend. These humans destroyed the Fourth Fleet. They must be eliminated before they become an example to others." Sun Young reviewed the report in silence. When she finished, her expression was grim. "I'll need 3 months to assemble the fleet and travel to the human system." "You have 2 months," Daiho said. "And Admiral, there is no acceptable outcome except the complete destruction of the human species. Use whatever methods necessary. Turn their planet into a dead rock if you must, but end this threat." Back on Earth, General Ji-hoon stood on the surface looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the retreating alien ships were carrying their message of defeat back to the Empire, and somewhere out there a larger force was preparing to return. Dr. Bowman approached him carrying a tablet. "The scientists have been analyzing the captured alien ship. Their technology is impressive, but it's old. Refined and perfected over millennia, but fundamentally unchanged. They've stopped innovating because they haven't needed to. And we've been innovating for our entire history because we've always been at war with ourselves," Ji-hoon said. "The question is, will it be enough when they come back with everything they have?" Bowman smiled grimly. "We'll find out. I've got teams working on new weapon systems. If they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Ji-hoon nodded. 4,000 human soldiers had died today. When the Empire returned, that number would be much higher. But humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and near extinction from climate collapse. They had clawed their way up from caves to the stars through sheer determination. If the Empire thought one defeat would break humanity, they were about to learn their second lesson about Earth. Humans don't surrender. They adapt. They learn. And they win. General Ji-hoon stood in the command center deep beneath Geneva, watching the screens that showed Earth's last hope. He was 60 years old, his hair gray, his face marked with scars from the resource wars of his youth. He had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, and now that it had arrived, he felt surprisingly calm. "Confirm contact," said one of the technicians. 50 objects, definitely ships entering the solar system near Neptune's orbit. Their trajectory puts them on a direct course for Earth. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. The room around him was filled with screens, computers, and people working at various stations. This was the Global Space Defense Coalition headquarters. built after humanity had discovered the first evidence of alien life in 2190. That evidence had been nothing more than a strange signal from a distant star, but it had been enough to change everything. "How long until they reach us?" Jae-hoon asked. "At their current speed, approximately 18 hours, replied Commander Nari. She was younger than Ji-hoon, only 40, with sharp eyes and a reputation for being absolutely fearless. She commanded the ESS Indomitable, Earth's most advanced warship, currently hidden in the asteroid belt with the rest of the fleet. Ambassador Yuna stepped forward. She was a diplomat, trained to find peaceful solutions to conflicts. "General, we need to try communication. Perhaps they'll respond to reason." "Send your message," Ji-hoon said, "but prepare for them to ignore it." Yuna transmitted a carefully worded message in multiple formats. Mathematical formulas showing peaceful intent, images of Earth's people and culture, a direct plea for dialogue. The message was broadcast on every frequency humanity could produce, from primitive radio waves to advanced quantum signals. No response came. The alien fleet continued forward, weapons charging, shields activating. They were not here to talk. "They've made their choice," Ji-hoon said quietly. "Activate the protocols. Contact Dr. Bowman and tell him we need everything ready within 12 hours. Dr. Bowman arrived at the command center within the hour. He was a thin man with wild hair and eyes that never seemed to stop moving. He carried a tablet computer that contained decades of research, all of it classified at the highest levels. "They're using gravity drives," Bowman said without preamble. "Old technology, at least by their standards. I'd estimate they're about 3,000 years ahead of what we showed them in that first message." "The message we sent 60 years ago," Nari said. "The one with primitive radio waves and basic mathematics." Bowman smiled. "It was not a pleasant expression." "Exactly. We wanted to see who would come looking for us. We wanted to know if they'd come as friends or conquerors. Now we know." Ji-hoon pulled up a display that showed the solar system. Red dots marked the positions of the alien fleet. Blue dots showed Earth's forces. To anyone looking at the display, it would seem hopeless. 50 alien warships against 30 human vessels, and the human ships were smaller, seemingly weaker. "Show them the truth," Ji-hoon ordered. Bowman's fingers danced across his tablet. The display changed. Suddenly, thousands of tiny blue dots appeared throughout the asteroid belt, around Mars near Jupiter's moons. Each dot represented a weapons platform, a mine, or a defense drone. "We've been preparing for 60 years, Bowman explained. "Since the day we sent that message, we've been building. We wanted them to think we were primitive. We wanted them to underestimate us." Engineer Sang-hoon joined them, a broad-shouldered man who looked more like a soldier than a scientist. He brought up another display showing a sleek missile. "This is Prometheus," Sang-hoon said. "Antimatter warhead. One missile can destroy a ship the size of a city. We have 5,000 of them positioned throughout the system. And this," Bowman added, pulling up another schematic, "is our quantum warfare suite. While they scan us with their sensors, we'll be uploading viruses directly into their computer systems using quantum entanglement. They won't even know we're in their systems until we take control." Ambassador Yuna looked sick. "This is genocide. We're planning to massacre them." "No," Ji-hoon said firmly. "We're planning to survive. They came here to conquer us. We're simply refusing to be conquered." Nari checked her communications. "General, the alien fleet is broadcasting a message. Audio and visual." The main screen flickered to life. An alien face appeared, humanoid but with features that were slightly wrong. 2 sharp angles, eyes that reflected light strangely. The creature spoke in a language that was harsh and guttural. "Primitive species of Earth." The translation software rendered the words. "I am Admiral Tae-yang of the Valdrian Empire. Your planet has been selected for collection. Surrender your resources and submit to Imperial authority, or your species will be destroyed. You have 1 of your hours to respond." The transmission ended. The command center was silent for a long moment. "Sang-hoon," Ji-hoon said quietly. "Arm Prometheus. Bowman, start uploading the quantum viruses. Nari, get to your ship and prepare the fleet." "And the response to their ultimatum?" Yuna asked. Ji-hoon thought for a moment. Then he nodded to the communications officer. "Send this message. Text only, multiple languages including their own. Make sure they understand every word." He dictated carefully. "Admiral Tae-yang of the Valdrian Empire. You have made a grave mistake. This is your only warning. Leave our system now and we will forget this happened. Continue your approach and you will learn why humanity survived itself. The message was sent. Again, there was no response. The alien fleet continued forward, now targeting Earth's orbital stations with weapons that could turn cities into glass. "They're not leaving," Nari reported. "No," Ji-hoon agreed. "They think we're bluffing. They think we're primitives making empty threats. They're about to learn the truth." Bowman watched his screens as the alien fleet entered weapons range of Earth's orbital stations. "General, they're preparing to fire. Their weapons are charged and targeting our stations." "Do they have their shields up?" Ji-hoon asked. "Full power," Bowman confirmed. "And their sensors are actively scanning us?" "Yes, sir. They're scanning everything, trying to map our defenses." Ji-hoon allowed himself a small smile. "Then they've already lost." "Bowman, execute the quantum insertion protocol." Bowman pressed a button on his tablet. Nothing seemed to happen. On the screens, the alien fleet continued forward, apparently unchanged. But deep in the computer systems of 50 Valdrian warships, quantum-entangled particles that had piggybacked on the aliens' own sensor sweeps were now unpacking themselves. Viruses more sophisticated than anything the Valdrian had encountered spread through their networks like wildfire. 30 seconds until their weapons fire, a technician reported. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. The alien weapons charged, ready to unleash devastation on Earth's orbital stations. 5 seconds, the weapons went dark. Every weapon system on every alien ship simply stopped working. Shields flickered and failed. Navigation systems crashed. Even their communications array went silent. "Direct hit," Bowman said with satisfaction. "Their entire fleet is blind and defenseless." Admiral Taeyang's face appeared on the screen again, but this time he wasn't broadcasting. He was shouting at his own crew, panic clear in his voice even without translation. "Nari," Ji-hoon said calmly, "you may fire when ready." Commander Nari sat in the command chair of the ESS Indomitable, watching as her tactical officer Minho locked onto the closest alien ship. It was a massive vessel, easily 10 times the size of any human warship. But size didn't matter when you couldn't defend yourself. "Firing," Minho reported. A single projectile left the Indomitable. It was small, dense, and moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light. It took 3 seconds to cross the distance between the human ship and its target. The alien warship didn't have time to respond. The kinetic kill vehicle struck the ship's reactor core at relativistic speeds. The resulting explosion was bright enough to be seen from Earth without a telescope. When the light faded, there was nothing left but expanding plasma. "One down," Nari reported. 49 to go. Throughout the asteroid belt, human warships powered up their engines and emerged from hiding. They were smaller than the Valdrian vessels, but they moved with a grace and speed that the larger ships couldn't match. And they weren't alone. Thousands of AI-controlled drones swarmed around them, each one a weapon with the processing power to outthink and outmaneuver any human pilot. The Battle of Sol had begun, and the Valdrian Empire was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their experience with war. The signal came from nowhere. It traveled through the vast emptiness of space for decades before the Valdrian Empire's listening stations caught it. The transmission was weak, primitive, using old electromagnetic waves that most civilizations had abandoned thousands of years ago. Captain Hyun sat in his dark office aboard the orbital station, watching the strange patterns on his screen. He was young for his position, only 30 cycles old, but his skill with languages and codes had earned him a place in Imperial intelligence. The signal repeated every few seconds, and each time it played, Hyun felt a strange chill run down his spine. "What is it?" asked Mireille, the station's xenolinguist. She leaned over his shoulder, her eyes scanning the data. Mireille had studied over 200 alien languages in her career. She had seen everything from simple pictograms to complex mathematical formulas, but this signal was different. "I don't know yet," Hyun replied. His fingers moved across the controls, filtering out the noise and static. Slowly, the message became clearer. It contained numbers, basic mathematics, and what looked like a map. "They're showing us where they are." Mireille's breath caught in her throat. "They're inviting us to find them." "Do they not understand how dangerous that is?" The message played again. Through the static and interference, they could hear sounds. Music. Voices speaking in dozens of different languages. Mathematical formulas that proved the senders understood basic physics. And then, translated into simple images and numbers, a message that made Hyun's blood run cold with its innocence. "We are here. We are listening. We hope to meet you in peace. The planet they came from was blue and green, covered in water and life. The transmission included crude images of the world, rotating slowly to show its features. 2 large ice caps at the poles, vast oceans, continents covered in lights that suggested cities. The locals called their world Earth. Hyun sent his report up the chain of command. Within a day, it reached Admiral Taeyang, commander of the 4th Fleet. Taeyang was a decorated officer who had conquered 12 systems in his career. He was ambitious, hungry for glory, and he saw opportunity in everything. The admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive warship called the Eternal Victory. Around him, his officers worked at their stations monitoring the vast darkness of space. Taeyang read Hyun's report 3 times, and with each reading his smile grew wider. A primitive species, he said to his second-in-command, using radio waves to announce their presence to the galaxy. They might as well be children playing with fire. Sir, the xenolinguist noted that their mathematics are sophisticated, the officer replied carefully. Perhaps we should approach with caution. Taeyang laughed. Sophisticated? They're using electromagnetic radiation to communicate. We abandoned that technology 3,000 years ago. No, this will be simple. We'll collect their resources, add their population to our labor force, and I'll have another conquest to add to my record. The admiral immediately sent a message to the imperial capital. The response came within a week. Emperor Daeho himself had reviewed the situation. The emperor was ancient, over 500 cycles old, and he had ruled the Valdrian Empire through its greatest period of expansion. 400 systems bowed to his throne. Hundreds of species served the empire in various capacities. The emperor's message was brief and direct. Begin collection operations. The primitive species will serve the empire or be destroyed. Glory to Valdrian. Admiral Taeyang assembled his fleet. 50 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet if necessary. The fleet included dreadnoughts with massive cannons, carriers filled with fighter craft, and support ships carrying ground troops and mining equipment. It was overwhelming force designed to crush any resistance before it could begin. Captain Hyun was ordered to join the fleet as an intelligence officer. He would help translate any communications from the primitives and assess their technology. As he boarded the transport ship that would take him to the Eternal Victory, Mirai caught his arm. I have a bad feeling about this, she said quietly. I've been analyzing their transmission more carefully. The mathematics they included, the way they structured their message, it shows a level of abstract thinking that's unusual. They're primitives, Hyun replied, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. What can they possibly do against the 4th Fleet? Mirai shook her head. I don't know. But there's something about that message. They said they hope to meet us in peace. Why would they hope for that, unless they've considered the alternative? Hyun had no answer. He boarded his transport and joined the fleet. The journey to Earth would take 6 months. The Valdrian used gravity drives that bent space, allowing faster-than-light travel. But the distance was considerable. During the journey, Hyun studied everything they knew about Earth. The planet had 1 moon. It orbited a yellow star. The atmosphere was oxygen-rich. There were billions of the creatures living there, concentrated in large cities. The species called themselves humans. They were bipedal, soft-skinned, and apparently divided into numerous nations that competed with each other. Their technology was indeed primitive. Combustion engines, nuclear fission, simple computers. They had barely left their own planet with only a few space stations and 1 small base on their moon. It will be a massacre, said one of Taeyang's officers during a briefing. They have nothing that can threaten us. Our shields will stop anything they can throw at us, and our weapons will cut through their defenses like they don't exist. Admiral Taeyang nodded in agreement. We'll position the fleet at their moon and give them 1 chance to surrender. When they refuse, as primitives always do, we'll demonstrate our power by destroying one of their cities. After that, they'll have no choice but to submit. The other officers murmured their approval. This was how it always went. The Valdrian had perfected the art of conquest over 3 millennia. Overwhelming force, a demonstration of power, and then subjugation. It had worked on every species they'd encountered. Captain Hyun sat in the back of the briefing room and said nothing. He thought about Mirai's words. He thought about the message from Earth with its simple hope for peace. And he thought about how that message had traveled through space for decades, sent by people who had no idea what waited for them in the darkness. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Ahead of them, The yellow star burned steadily, and orbiting that star the blue planet waited. "Begin scanning operations," Admiral Taeyang ordered. "Let's see what these primitives have been doing since they sent their little message." The fleet moved forward into the solar system. None of them noticed the small anomalies in the asteroid belt. None of them detected the strange quantum signatures near the outer planets, and none of them realized that Earth had been watching them since the moment they arrived. The trap was set. The Empire's biggest mistake had begun.